Lone Star Community Radio presents the Lone Star Radio Hour. For the next hour, you will hear locally produced radio plays from different groups around Montgomery County. If you're interested in the Lone Star Radio Hour and you want us to run one of your programs that you produced, just contact us at lscrstudios at gmail.com. If you are interested in recording your own show here at the studio, you can just contact us. And we're also looking for sponsorships for this time slot. So, again, just contact us at lscrstudios at gmail.com. You can also visit the Lone Star Radio Hour online at irlonestar.com/lsrh. That's irlonestar.com/lsrh. For all the plays on on-demand format. The following radio play you're about to hear is produced by the Players Theater Company in Conroe, Texas. For more information on the Players, check them out online at www.owentheater.com/players.
Live from the studios of Lone Star Internet Radio, located in the glittering Arts and Entertainment District in downtown Conroe, Texas, comes the Players Theater Company Old Time Radio Hour. This is Dennis Nelson, again extending a very warm welcome to each of you to enter the world of vintage radio. The Charlotte Bronte classic Jane Eyre needs little introduction, but the Campbell Playhouse may not be as familiar. When the series started, it was better known as the Mercury Theater on the Air, an innovative series created by powerhouse actor, director, producer Orson Welles. The series brought exceptional and accessible dramatizations of the classics into homes across the country, yet it struggled to keep an audience or find a sponsor. Following on the national hysteria surrounding the War of the Worlds radio broadcast and Wells' own instant stardom, the Mercury Theater found a friend in the Campbell Soup Company. Now, with a sponsor, the series became the Campbell Playhouse, continuing the Mercury Theater mission of bringing intelligent and entertaining adaptations of classic plays and novels into American homes. We're ready to recreate that radio spirit of classic drama with you tonight. But before we start, let's introduce our gifted cast of familiar players. Returning to the old-time radio hour after starring in The Maltese Falcon and in our pilot episode featuring Philip Marlowe is the magnificent Patrice Cantamenos in the title role of Jane Eyre. Patrice brings with her a wealth of stage experience, and we're excited to have her with us. Playing young Jane tonight is the gifted Cassidy Perkins, whose players' credits include a role in Over the Tavern. Cassidy is instrumental in our Players' Kids performances, having choreographed their production of 101 Dalmatians. Cassidy also appeared in our Christmas Carol episode as Martha Cratchit, and in last month's chilling Lights Out as Edna. The charismatic Kelly Strang plays Mason this evening. Kelly's versatile voice has appeared in several recent Radio Hour performances, including the heartwarming Bob Cratchit in A Christmas Carol, the menacing Gutman in The Maltese Falcon, and the wicked Raja in The Green Hornet. Also returning tonight as Brocklehurst is the fantastic Adam Morrow. Adam debuted with the Radio Hour earlier this year as the nefarious Joel Cairo in The Maltese Falcon, but you may also remember him as Britt Reed, a.k.a. The Green Hornet. The outstanding Kim Wood Graham returns tonight as Mrs. Fairfax. She was last heard in The Green Hornet as adventurous photographer Clicker Benny. Kim has also worked behind the scenes during the Eyre Theater production of The Fantastics. She will also be improvising tonight all of our music. Finally, reprising his role as Orson Welles and starring as Edward Rochester is the masterful Sam Martinez, a skilled actor, director, in his own right, much like Wells himself.
You're killing me, Dennis.
My good fellow, as you will probably say later in the broadcast, and as they repeatedly say in jolly old England, your comfort is totally inconsequential to me, just as long as my check is in the mail.
Yeah, tell me again, who do I make this check out to?
Let's have a little review, my friend. Dennis has 2 N's. Please remember to put in the middle initial, which is E. Mm-hmm. Then we go on to Nelson, which... never mind. We'll talk about it after the program. We will begin our sweeping drama in just a moment. But first, an important message from our sponsor.
The Players Theatre Company began in 1967 as the Little Theatre of Conroe and produced shows on the Conroe High School stage and then in a former plumbing supply store at the corner of Galveston and Robertson Streets. In 1979, the group helped to clean and restore the Crichton Theatre, where we operated for nearly 30 years as the Crichton Players. In 2008, we moved into our current residence at the Owen Theatre.
The Owen Theatre is an intimate soft-seat venue which seats approximately 250 people and is home to the Players Theatre Company. This building was constructed in 1946 as the Wiesner Pontiac GMC dealership. It is owned by the City of Conroe and has been renovated to accommodate the production and presentation of live theatrical performances. It is noted amongst the sparkling arts and entertainment district of downtown Conroe, where spectacular shows are performed to eager fans year-round, and where art galleries line the streets with creative offerings for collectors of every strata.
Be sure to get your tickets to the crowd-pleasing Stephen Sondheim musical Gypsy, now playing at the Owen Theatre. For subscription information and for tickets, please go to owentheatre.com. That's OWENTHEATRE.com.
The makers of Campbell's Soup present The Campbell Playhouse with Orson Welles as producer.
Good evening, this is Orson Welles. Tonight we bring you a revival of one of our favorite broadcasts, Charlotte Bronte's unforgettable love story, Jane Eyre. In the last 90 years, Jane Eyre has acquired all the full respectability of an English classic and has lost none of its color. It began as one of those books which everybody read and no nice person ever would read. For Jane Eyre, appearing in England as it did early in the reign of Queen Victoria, came as a general shock and was an immediate success, as appalling and popular as royal scandal, and as widely circulated as gossip. Here's a contemporary press notice. Quote, "Altogether, the biography of Jane Eyre is preeminently an anti-Christian composition. There is throughout it a murmuring against the comforts of the rich and against the privations of the poor, which, as far as each individual is concerned, is a murmuring against God's own appointment. There is a proud, perpetual assertion of the rights of man, for which we find no authority in either God's word or in God's providence. We do not hesitate to say that the tone of mind, and through which has overthrown authority abroad, has fostered rebellion at home, is the same which has also written Jane Eyre." Unquote. The authorship of this scarlet indignity to English letters was variously attributed to almost everyone who could write, except a certain Miss Charlotte Bronte of Yorkshire, who did write it in spite of a certain pen name, Currer Bell, attributed with wild generosity to almost everyone in England, including the devil and Thackeray's governess, and even among others the perpetrator of Wuthering Heights, who was indeed Miss Emily, another Bronte and Charlotte's sister. The Brontes are a story in themselves, several stories, many of which you know and most of which I wish we had the time to tell. My own personal favorite is that mysterious, lonely, impoverished, and entirely inexplicable family is the head of the household himself, the terrible-tempered Reverend Patrick Bronte, that gloomy man of God, whom we are told cleared the Bronte drawing-room of visitors who happened to bore him by firing a revolver in that Bronte ceiling. But there is no end to these stories from the Brontes, so let's get to the beginning of Miss Charlotte's own.
My name is Jane Eyre. I have no father or mother, brothers or sisters. As a child, I lived with my aunt, Mrs. Reed, at Gateshead Hall. I do not remember that she ever spoke one kind word to me. When I was 10 years old, she sent me off to school.
So, Mrs. Reed, this is a little girl respecting whom you applied to me. Her size is small. What is your name, little girl?
Jane Eyre.
Oh ho, say Jane Eyre, Mr. Brocklehurst, little girl.
Jane Eyre, Mr. Brocklehurst.
Well, Jane Eyre, are you a good child? No sight so sad as that of a naughty child, especially a naughty little girl. Do you know where the wicked go after death?
They go to hell.
Huh, well, and what must you do to avoid going to hell?
I must keep in good health and not die.
And how can you keep in good health? Children younger than you die daily. Tell me, Jane Eyre, do you read the Bible?
Sometimes.
With pleasure?
No, sir.
No? Oh, how shocking! I have a little boy younger than you who knows 6 psalms by heart, and when you ask him which he'd rather have, a gingerbread nut to eat or the verse of a psalm to learn, he always says, "Oh, a verse of a psalm! Angels sing psalms," says he. "I wish to be a little angel here below." He then gets 2 gingerbread nuts in return for his infant piety.
Psalms are not interesting.
That proves you have a wicked heart, and you must pray God to change it, and to give you a new and clean one, to take away your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And we'll try our best to help God, will we not, Mrs. Reed, and make you a useful and humble girl.
I left Gateshead Hall on a dark, cold morning for Lowood. As the coach started, I put out my head and looked back at the house and up at the window behind which my aunt was still sleeping. I'm glad you're sending me away, Mrs. Reed, for I hate to live here with you. And if anyone asks me how I liked you and how you treated me, I will always say that you treated me with miserable cruelty and that the very sight of you makes me sick. I spent 8 years at Lowood. It was not so much a school as an institution for the children of the poor, supported by charitable bequests. Soon after I was 18, I placed an advertisement in the Yorkshire Herald, applying for the position of governess. The following week, a reply came from a Mrs. Fairfax of Thornfield Hall, near Millcote, in Yorkshire.
If J.E., who advertised last Thursday, is qualified to teach the usual branches of a good English education, together with French, drawing, and music, and if she is in a position to give satisfactory references of character and competency, a situation can be offered her where there is but one pupil, a little girl, 9 years of age.
Three days later, I left Lowood School. I arose and dressed myself with care. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I regretted that I was not handsomer. I felt it a misfortune to be so little, pale, and with features so irregular and so marked. I brushed my hair very smooth, put on my black frock, adjusted my clean white tucker. Then I set out for my new situation. On the evening of the next day, I was at Thornfield Hall. I was ushered into a small room. At a table by a cheerful fire sat the neatest imaginable little old lady, occupied in knitting.
How do you do, my dear? I'm afraid you've had a tedious ride.
Are you Mrs. Fairfax?
You are right. Now, sit down here before this fire. You must be tired to death.
Oh, no, indeed, ma'am. Shall I have the pleasure of seeing Miss Fairfax tonight?
What did you say, my dear? I'm a little deaf.
Shall I have the pleasure of seeing Miss Fairfax tonight?
Oh, you mean your pupil, Adele. Oh, no, she is not my daughter.
Indeed?
I have no family.
And you have this great house all alone?
Oh, bless you, my dear child. This house is not mine. It belongs to Mr. Rochester.
And who is he?
The owner of Thornfield Hall. Did you not know he was called Rochester? He is our employer. He owns the house and much of the land about here. I'm merely the housekeeper. Your pupil is his ward. He wrote to me to find a governess for her.
He's not here himself.
Almost never. Much of the time he's abroad.
It seems strange for a gentleman to own this great house, yet never stop here and enjoy it.
You will find, Miss Eyre, that Mr. Rochester is in many ways a strange gentleman.
I slept smooth and soundly that night in my new home. Once I woke and heard a clock strike. I heard another sound. Perhaps I was still half asleep and dreaming. It seemed to me that somewhere in the house I heard a low, mirthless laugh. When I woke, it was a bright day and the sun was shining. And then, for many weeks, nothing happened to break the smooth course of our lives at Thornfield Hall. One day in January, a fine, calm day, I put on my coat and went out for a walk. As I started back, the afternoon was already dimming. On the hilltop above me sat the rising moon, pale as a cloud. I walked fast to get home. A sheet of ice covered the bridge where a little brook had overflowed after a rapid thaw. Suddenly, in the distance, I heard the sound of hooves. A horseman came over the hill, down toward the little bridge.
Easy there. Ow, the devil!
Are you injured, sir?
Stand at one side, child, further away. Down, pilot, easy there. Ah, my leg.
If you are hurt and want help, sir, I can fetch a carriage from Thornfield Hall.
Thank you, I shall do. I've no broken bones, only a sprain. Now go along, child, leave me alone.
I wouldn't think of leaving you, sir, at so late an hour, till I see you are fit to mount your horse again.
I should think you ought to be home yourself, if you have a home in the neighbourhood. Where do you come from?
From just below. I'm not at all afraid of being out late when it is moonlight.
You live just below. You mean the house with the battlements?
Yes, sir.
Now, whose house is it?
Mr. Rochester's.
Do you know Mr. Rochester?
No, I've never seen him.
He's not resident, then?
No,
Can you tell me where he is?
I cannot. I'm told he's at Thornfield very rarely.
Well, you're not a servant at the hall, of course. You're,
I'm the governess to Mr. Rochester's ward.
To the governess. Deuce take it, I'd forgotten the governess. Well, I can't send you to fetch help, but you may be useful to me yourself. If you'd be so kind.
Yes, sir.
You've not an umbrella I can use it as a stick?
No.
Excuse me, necessity compels me to make useful of you. Come here, lean closer, let me your shoulder. Now, there we are. Now, hold the bridle. There we are. Thank you. Just hand me my whip, which lies under that hedge.
Here, sir.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye, child. Goodbye.
As I walked back to Thornfield, I kept seeing his tall figure enveloped in a riding cloak, fur-collared and steel-clasped, remembering his stern face, his angry, thwarted eyes. It was late when I got back to the hall. Mrs. Fairfax, what dog is that?
He came with the master.
With whom?
With the master, Mr. Rochester. He's just arrived. He's in the drawing room, and John has gone for a surgeon. Master's had an accident. His horse fell coming down Hay Lane. He sent for you, Jane, and was surprised when I told him you were out.
Did he say anything about...
He said you were to go to him the minute you came in. You'd better hurry.
Yes, come in.
I knew him at once, with his broad, dark brows, his square forehead and grim mouth. When he looked up, I could see no trace of recognition in his eyes.
Well, Miss Eyre, I've questioned your pupil, my little ward. Found you've taken great pains with her. She's not bright, she's no talents, yet in a short time she's made much improvement. Sit down, Miss Eyre, come to the fire. Adele, go amuse yourself with the dog. You've been resident in my house for 3 months, Miss Eyre.
Yes, sir.
You come from...
From Lowood School, sir.
charitable concern. How long were you there?
8 years.
8 years. Must be tenacious of life. No wonder you have the look of another world, Miss Eyre. I marvelled what you've got in that sort of face. I have half a mind just now in Hay Lane to demand whether you bewitched my horse, I'm sure yet. Who are your parents?
I have none.
Never had, I suppose. Do you remember them?
No, Mr. Rochester.
Who recommended you come here to Thornfield?
I advertised, and Mrs. Fairfax answered my advertisement.
Yes. Mrs. Fairfax speaks quite well of you. Praise would not bias me. You began by throwing down my horse.
Sir?
Well, I have you to thank for this sprain. Well, what age were you, Miss Eyre, when you went to Lowood?
About 10.
Stayed there 8 years. You're about 18. Arithmetic is useful. Tell me, what did you learn at Lowood? Can you play?
A little.
Of course, the established answer. Sit down at the piano, Miss Eyre. I mean, if you please. Excuse my tone of command. I cannot alter my customary habits for a new inmate. Sit down at the piano and play a tune.
Very well, sir.
Enough, Miss Eyre. That's enough. You play a little, I see, like any other English schoolgirl. Perhaps better than some, but not well. Are you happy when you play?
I am absorbed, sir.
So absorbed, Miss Eyre, that you have let Adele stay up past her bedtime. Good night. Good night to all of you now.
For several days I did not see Mr. Rochester. Then, one evening, he sent for me to come down.
Come in, Miss Eyre. Be seated. Don't draw the chair further off, Miss Eyre. Sit down exactly where I placed it, if you please. Otherwise I cannot see you without disturbing my position in this comfortable chair, which I have no mind to do. You examine me, Miss Eyre. Do you think me handsome?
No, sir.
No. Upon my word, there's something singular about you. You're very quiet, quaint, grave and simple. You sit there with your hands before you, and your eyes generally bent on the carpet, except, by the way, when they are directed piercingly to my face, just as now, for instance. When one asks you a question, you rap out a rejoinder, which is, if not blunt, at least brusque. What do you mean by it?
Sir, I speak too plain. I beg your pardon. I ought to have replied that tastes differ, that beauty is of little consequence, or something of that sort.
You should have replied no such thing. Beauty of little consequence, indeed. Go on. What faults do you find with me, pray? I suppose I have all my limbs, all my features, like any other man?
I am sorry, Mr. Rochester. Forgive me. It was only a blunder.
Just so. I think so, and you shall be answerable for it. Now, Miss Eyre, criticize me. Does my forehead not please you? Does it not look as if I am a fool?
Far from it, sir.
Young lady, I even have a kind of rude tenderness of heart. Or don't you believe that? Well, why don't you answer me? You look very much puzzled, Miss Eyre. You're not pretty any more than I am handsome, yet a puzzled air becomes you, so puzzle on. You puzzled me the first evening I invited you down here. I've almost forgotten you since. Other ideas have driven you from my head. But tonight I have resolved to be at ease. It would please me now to draw you out, to learn more of you. Therefore speak. Speak!
What about, sir?
Whatever you like. I leave the choice of the matter or the subject entirely entreatingly up to you. You're dumb, Miss Eyre, or stubborn. Yes, stubborn and a little annoyed. And it's my fault, Miss Eyre. I put my request in an absurd and almost insulting form. Miss Eyre, I beg your pardon. Very sorry. Where are you going, Miss Eyre?
To put Adele to bed. It's past her bedtime.
Oh, confess it. You're afraid of me.
I am bewildered.
You're afraid. Your self-love dreads a blunder.
I have no wish to talk of nonsense.
If you did it, you would do it in such a grave manner, quiet manner, I should mistake it for sense. You never laugh, Miss Eyre? Don't trouble to answer. You're still bent on going?
It's past 9, sir. Good night.
Good night. Good night, Miss Eyre.
I had no rest that night. I could not sleep for thinking of Mr. Rochester, his strange manner of speaking, the sad look that was in his eyes. his moodiness with others, his kindness to me. He had been at Thornfield 6 days now. Mrs. Fairfax said he never stayed there more than a fortnight. In a few days he'd be gone again. I lay there listening. Then it seemed my door was touched, as if fingers were groping their way along the panels in the dark gallery outside. Who's there? Who is it? Quickly I got out of bed. I hurried on my frock and shawl. With trembling hands I opened the door. The air was filled with smoke. There was a strong smell of burning. Mr. Rochester's door was ajar, and smoke rushed from his room. I went in. The curtains were on fire. Wake! Wake, Mr. Rochester! Wake! He lay stupefied and asleep. I rushed to the basin and pitcher.
What is it? Is there a flood?
No, sir, but there's been a fire.
In the name of all the herbs in Christendom, is that Jane Eyre? What have you done with me, witch? Sorceress? And this smoke, who was in the room beside you? Have you plotted to drown me?
I will fetch a candle, sir.
Wait till I get my dry garments. Where are they? Oh, yes, here they are. Here are my dressing gowns. Now run for a candle.
Shall I call for Mrs. Fairfax?
Mrs. Fairfax? No, what the deuce would you call her for? Not at all. Just be still, Jane. Be still. Now look at me, Jane. Jane, did you hear an odd laugh tonight? Have you heard that laugh before, or something like it?
Yes, sir. I thought perhaps one of the servants...
Just so. One of the servants. Yes, that's it. You've guessed it, Jane. I'm glad you're the only person acquainted with the precise details of tonight's accident. You're no talking fool. Jane, say nothing about it. Return to your room. I should do very well on the sofa in the library for the rest of the night. In 2 hours the servants will be up.
Good night.
Are you quitting me already, in that way?
But you had said I might go, sir.
Oh, but not without taking leave. Not in that brief, dry fashion. You've saved my life. At least shake hands. Jane, you've saved my life. I know you'd do me some good in some way, sometime.
I'm glad. I'm glad I happened to be awake, sir.
But you will go?
I'm cold, sir.
Cold? Yes, and standing in a pool of water. Well, go then, Jane. Go.
We pause for a moment from our Campbell Playhouse presentation of Jane Eyre. Let us turn our attention now to this important message.
The Players Theater Company actively serves the community of Conroe, Texas, and Montgomery County. Every season, your talented friends and neighbors bring you 7 amazing shows on our stage, and now even more through the Players Theater Company Old Time Radio Hour. There's always something going on, and we are always on the lookout for new volunteers. Whether you're a seasoned professional or new to the theater, our doors are open to you. We invite you and your talent to help us serve the community.
It's your effort and expertise that make our shows as good as they are. If you are interested in acting, directing, dancing, props, makeup, lighting, being a host or hostess, or any of the exciting areas on or off stage, we want you to join the Players Theater Company. Go to our website and join today. We look forward to meeting you. Go to theplayerstc.com. That's theplayerstc.com. Join today.
We resume the Orson Welles production of Jane Eyre on the Campbell Playhouse.
I did not see Mr. Rochester again for several weeks. He had left Thornfield Hall. And when he did finally come home, it was with a large company of very elegant guests. For days the house was filled with their maids and valets. There was one lady in particular with whom my master, Mr. Rochester, seemed especially attentive.
The Honourable Blanche Ingram. Lord Ingram's sister she is. She's held the most beautiful girl in the county.
She is beautiful. And this beautiful and accomplished young lady is not yet married.
It appears not. The fact is, she has no very large fortune.
Oh, but Mrs. Fairfax, is there not some wealthy nobleman or rich man who has taken a fancy to her? Mr. Rochester, for instance. He is rich, is he not?
Oh, yes. But you see, there is a considerable difference in age. Mr. Rochester is past 40. Miss Ingram is barely 20.
But what of that? More unequal marriages are made every day.
True. Yet I scarcely fancy Mr. Rochester would entertain an idea of that sort. Mr. Rochester is very talented and lively in society. The ladies are very fond of him. But I don't think he has any intention of marrying anybody. What's the matter with you, child? You've eaten nothing. You've scarcely tasted anything since you began tea. What is it, Jane? What's happened to you?
I soon had a chance to observe Miss Ingram myself. That evening, word came that Mr. Rochester wished to introduce my pupil, Adele, to the ladies in the drawing-room after dinner. As they came in from the dining-room, their dresses gleamed in the light. I rose and curtsied to them. One or two bent their heads in return. The others only stared at me. As soon as I could, I left quietly through the side door. In the passage, I noticed that my ribbon on my shoe was loose. I stooped to tie it. Oh, I'm very well, sir.
Jane, why did you not come over and speak to me in the drawing room?
I did not wish to disturb you.
What have you been doing during my absence?
Nothing particular. Teaching Adele as usual.
And getting a good deal paler. Return to the drawing room, Miss Eyre. You're deserting entirely too early.
I am tired, sir.
And a little depressed. Well, tonight I excuse you, but understand that as long as my visitors stay, I expect you to appear in the drawing room every evening. It is my wish. Don't neglect it. Who the devil is that at this time of night?
Shall I go and see, sir?
Yes, Jane, I must return to my guests. I fear Miss Ingram will have marked my absence. Well, whoever it is, they'll not see him.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rochester! Mr. Rochester!
Yes, Jane, what is it? You seem excited.
It's a man to see you, sir. He wouldn't be put off. He said he'd wait for you. He went into the drawing room.
The devil he did. Have you got his name?
His name is Mason, sir. And he comes from the West Indies. From, Jamaica, I think.
Mason? West Indies? Is that what he said?
Do you feel ill, sir?
Jane, I've got a blow.
Oh, lean on me, sir.
Jane, you offered me your shoulder once before. Let me have it now.
Yes, sir, yes. And my arm.
Jane, if all the people in that drawing room came in a body and spat at me, what would you do, Jane?
I'd turn them out of the room, sir, if I could.
But if I were to go into them, and they dropped off and left me one by one, what then? Would you go with them?
I rather think not, sir. I should have more pleasure in staying with you.
To comfort me?
Yes, sir, to comfort you as well as I could.
Go in the drawing room, Jane. Step quietly up to Mason and whisper in his ear that Mr. Rochester wishes to see him. Bring him in here and then leave me. Good night.
Much later that night, I wakened suddenly.
Help! Will no one come? Rochester!
Jane, get up. I need you. Jane, have you a sponge in your room?
Yes, sir.
Have you any salts?
Yes.
Fetch both. Jane, you won't turn sick at the sight of blood?
I don't think I shall. I've never been tried yet.
Let me see. Give me your hand. Yes, warm and steady you'll do.
I followed Mr. Rochester to the floor above. We entered a large room, and beyond that, there was an open door. There was a light shining there, and from inside came a low sound, almost like a dog growling. In a chair in the center of the room was the form of a man, huddled and still. Mr. Rochester held the candle over it. I saw that it was the stranger Mason, the man that had called earlier that evening. His sleeve and his shirt on one side was soaked with blood.
She's done for me.
Nonsense, Mason.
She's done for me.
You've lost a little blood, that's all.
Sorry.
Jane, hold the candle. Hold this basin.
She wetted me with her teeth.
Mason, shut up!
She bit me like a dog when you took the knife from her.
I said be on your guard.
Oh, it was... I didn't expect it. She was so quiet at first.
I warned you, Mason.
I thought I could have done her some good.
You thought. Mason, it makes me impatient to hear you. Now get up. You must be out of the house before morning.
Rochester, she sucked the blood. She said she'd drain my heart.
Come, be silent. Don't mind your gibberish. Don't repeat it.
I wish I could forget it.
You will, Mason, when you're out of the country. Now come on. I'll help you down the stairs. There's a carriage waiting.
Thank God.
When you get back to Spanish Town, you'll think of her as dead and buried if you think of her at all.
Rochester, let her be taken care of. Let her be treated as tenderly as may be.
I do my best, Mason, and have done and will do it. Never fear. Yet would to God there were an end to all this.
A splendid midsummer shone over England. It was as if a band of Italian days had come from the south, like a flock of glorious passenger birds, and lighted to rest them on the cliffs of Albion. The last of the visitors had long since gone away. A great calm descended upon Thornfield Hall, and Mr. Rochester stayed on. Among the servants, the talk continued about his coming marriage to Miss Ingram. Yet I saw no preparations going on for such an event. I used to look at my master's face to see if it was sad or fierce. I could not forget that dreadful night, that strange secret terror that seemed to hang over him. But I had never seen his face so clear of clouds or ill feeling as it was in those weeks. Never had he called me more frequently to his presence. Never had he been kinder to me. And alas, never had I loved him so well. It was Midsummer Eve. I went down into the orchard, enticed there by the light of the rising moon. I heard a nightingale singing in the woods far away. The trees were laden with ripening fruit.
Jane. Good evening, Jane. Thornfield's a pleasant place in the summer, is it not?
Yes, sir.
You must have become to some degree attached to the house,
Oh, I am attached indeed.
and would be sorry to part with it.
Yes.
Oh, pity. It's always the way of the events in this life. No sooner have you gotten settled in a pleasant resting place than a voice calls to you to rise and move on, for the hour of repose is expired.
Must I move on, sir? Must I leave Thornfield?
I believe you must, Jane. I'm sorry, Jane, but I believe indeed you must.
Well, sir, I shall be ready when the order to march comes.
It's come now. I must give it tonight.
You're going to be married, sir?
Exactly. Precisely. With your usual acuteness, you've hit the nail straight on the head.
Soon, sir?
Very soon. That means that you and your pupil... Oh, look at me, Jane. You're not turning your head to look at more nightingales, are you? Adele must go back to school, and you, Miss Eyre, will get a new station.
Yes, sir. I will advertise immediately.
I've already, through my future mother-in-law, heard of a place that I think will suit. A place in Connaught Island.
It's a long way off, sir.
From what, Jane?
Oh, from England, and from Thornfield, and
Well,
from you, sir.
it is, to be sure it is. We've been good friends, Jane, have we not? Oh, come, we'll sit here in peace tonight, though we should never more sit here together. Sometimes I have a queer feeling with regard to you, Jane. especially when you're near to me as you are now. It's as if I had a string somewhere under my left ribs, tight and inextricably knotted to a similar string situated to this corresponding corner of your little frame. And if that boisterous channel comes abroad between us, I'm afraid that cord of communion would be snapped, and I have a nervous notion that I should take to bleeding inward. As for you, you'd forget me.
Oh, that I never should, sir. You know. I wish I'd never been born. I wish I'd never come to Thornfield.
Because you're sorry to leave it?
Because I've known you, Mr. Rochester, and it strikes me with terror and anguish. I absolutely must be torn from you forever. It's like looking at the necessity of death.
Where do you see the necessity?
Where? You, sir, have placed it before me.
In what shape?
In the shape of your bride, Miss Ingram.
My bride? What bride? I have no bride.
But you will have.
Yes, I will. I will, yes.
Then I must go. You have said it yourself.
No. You must stay. I swear it, and the oath will be kept.
But I tell you I must go. Do you think I can stay to become nothing to you? Do you think because I am poor, obscure, plain and little, that I am soulless and heartless? I have as much soul as you, and full as much heart.
Jane, be still. Jane, I offer you my hand, my heart, and a share of all my possessions.
Don't mock me.
I ask you to pass through life at my side, to be my wife. It's you only I intend to marry. Come, Jane, come here.
Your bride stands between us.
My bride is here. What love would I have for Miss Ingram? None, and that you know. I could not marry her. You strange, you almost unearthly thing. I love you as my own flesh.
Do you truly love me? Do you sincerely wish me to be your wife?
I do. I swear it.
Then, sir, I'll marry you.
Come to me, Jane. Come to me entirely now. Make my happiness, and I'll make yours. God pardon me, and men meddle not with me. I have her, and I'll hold her. Jane. Jane.
I require and charge you both, you, Edward Rochester, and you, Jane Eyre, that if either of you know of any impediments why you should not lawfully be joined together in matrimony, do you now confess it. Edward Rochester, wilt thou have this woman for thy wedded wife?
This marriage cannot go on.
Proceed with the service.
An insuperable impediment to this marriage exists. I can prove it.
What is the nature of this impediment?
The existence of a previous marriage. Mr. Rochester has a wedded wife, now living.
Can you prove that, sir?
Of course. I have an affidavit. I affirm and can prove that Edward Rochester of Thornfield Hall in the county of Yorkshire was married on the 20th of October, 1821.
That does not prove that my wife is still living.
She is living. She is now living at Thornfield Hall. I saw her there last April.
Who are you, sir?
I'm her brother.
Gentlemen. What this man says is true. Bigamy is an ugly word, yet that is what I am meant to be. A bigamist. I have been married, and the woman to whom I was married is alive. All of you say you never heard of a Mrs. Rochester in the house up yonder, but I dare say you've often heard gossip about a mysterious lunatic kept under watch and ward. I now inform you that she is my wife, Bertha Mason, whom I married 15 years ago in Spanish Town, Jamaica. Bertha Mason is insane. She came of an insane family, and they knew it when they let me marry her. You may see for yourself whether you wish... what sort of being I was cheated into marrying, and judge for yourself whether or not I had a right to break the contract and seek happiness with this girl I love. Well, I failed. Take the coach back to Thornfield. It'll not be wanted today. To the right about with every one of you. Away with your congratulations and your sympathy. Who wants them? They're 15 years too late.
Next morning, at dawn, I made my possessions into a parcel, tied on my bonnet, pinned my shawl, took my slippers, which I would not put on yet, and stole from my room. For the last time, I passed Mr. Rochester's door and started silently down the dark stairs.
Jane. You're going, Jane.
I am going, sir.
You're leaving me?
Yes.
Jane? Jane, do you mean to go one way in the world and let me go another?
I do.
You will not stay, Jane. You will not be my comforter, my rescuer. My deep love, my tragic grief, they're nothing to you.
I must go.
Oh, Jane, this is wicked. It be not... Jane, it won't be wicked to love me.
It would to obey you.
Then you will not yield. Jane, you will not stay?
No. God bless you, my dear master. God keep you from harm and wrong. Reward you well for your past kindness to me. Farewell. Farewell.
No, Jane. Jane, my hope, my love, my life.
Sadly, I made my way downstairs. Dawn glimmered in the yard. I set out across the field. My shoes were wet with dew. I thought of him now in his room, watching the sun rising, hoping I should soon come back and say I'd stay with him. I went on through the fields, stumbling blindly, not knowing where I was going.
We invite you now to pause one last time to hear this exciting opportunity.
Are you looking for a unique way to promote your local business and support the arts at the same time?
If your answer is yes, then you have a groundbreaking opportunity right now to tell the world about your business.
Promote yourself and the arts in Conroe by advertising on this very program.
Imagine your company's name mentioned here in a radio spot, complete with actors, music, and sound effects. We reach not only Conroe, Montgomery County, and Texas, but many countries worldwide.
The advertising contained in this program airs not only once, but several times, and then is included with the archive program for on-demand listening.
Rates are much less than you might expect, so contact Dick Schisler, General Manager at Lone Star Internet Radio, for more details.
Call today at 832-335-9646 or send an email to dick@irlonestar.com.
Don't wait. Claim your radio spot and get the word out about your business today.
And now the spellbinding conclusion to our Campbell Playhouse presentation of Jane Eyre.
A year and a half went by. I took a position that was open in a school in the Midlands, as far as I could from Thornfield. But I thought of Mr. Rochester everywhere. I longed to know what had become of him. In the end, I wrote to Mrs. Fairfax and begged for news. 3 months wore away. Day after day, the post arrived and brought nothing for me. Then one day I could stand it no longer. I packed my things and took the stagecoach for the north. 36 hours later, I was at Millcote.
Long way today, ma'am. You see, we don't get many travellers here these days. Lose your way or something?
I thought perhaps you could tell me, is Mr. Rochester living at Thornfield Hall now?
Why, say, ma'am, you must be a proper stranger in these parts. Don't you know? Thornfield Hall's quite a ruin. Not a stone standing. It was burnt down just about harvest time. Fire broke out in the dead of night, and before the engines arrived from Millcote, the building was one mass of flame.
The dead of night. Was it known how it started?
Well, they guessed, ma'am. They guessed. Indeed, I'd say it was ascertained without a doubt. You see, there was a woman. Would you believe it? A lunatic kept in the house. And this woman turned out to be Mr. Rochester's wife. It all came to light in a strange way. Yes, it did. There was a young lady came to live at the hall, a governess.
But the fire... Was Mr. Rochester at home when the fire broke out?
Oh, yes, indeed, he was. He went up to the attic. All was burning above and below, and got the servants out of their beds and helped them down himself. And then he went back to get his mad wife out of her cell. We called to him. She was on the roof, and we heard him call her name. We saw him approach her, and then, ma'am, she yelled and gave a spring, and the next minute she lay smash on the pavement.
Dead?
Yes, dead as the stones on which her brain and blood were scattered.
Oh, but is he alive?
What? Oh, yes. Mr. Rochester's alive, but many think he'd better be dead.
Why? Where is he? Is he in England?
Aye, he's in England. He can't get out of England. Yes, I fancy he's a fixture now. He's stone blind. Yes, he's stone blind, is Mr. Rochester.
I found him in a small manor house nearby, with 2 of the old servants from Thornfield looking after him. The parlour looked gloomy. A neglected handful of fire burnt low in the grate, and leaning over it, with his head supported against the high, old-fashioned mantelpiece, stood Mr. Rochester.
Is that you, Mrs. Fairfax? Down, Pilot, down! What's the matter? It is you, Mrs. Fairfax, is it not?
Mrs. Fairfax is in the kitchen.
Who is this? Who is this? Answer me. Speak again.
Will you have a little tea?
Who is it? Who speaks?
Your dog knows me, and John and Mrs. Fairfax know I'm here. I came only this evening.
Great God, what delusion has come over me? What sweet madness has seized me? Where are you? Are you only a voice? I can't see, but I must feel, or my heart will stop and my brain bursts. Oh, these are her fingers. Her very slight fingers. There must be more of her. Is it Jane? This is her shape, this is her size.
And this is her voice. She's all here. Her heart, too. God bless you, sir. I'm glad to be so near you again.
Jane. Oh, Jane Eyre.
I have now been married 10 years. I know what it is to live entirely for and with what I love best on earth. Edward Rochester continued blind the first 2 years of our marriage. Then, one morning, as I was writing a letter for him to his dictation, he came and bent over me.
Jane, have you a glittering ornament around your neck?
Yes?
And Jane, are you wearing a pale blue dress?
Yes. Later, when our firstborn was put into his arms, he could see that the boy had inherited his own eyes, as they once were, laughing, brilliant, and black.
Thank you so much for joining us during this romantic episode of the Players Theatre Company Old Time Radio Hour. Tonight's technical credits go to Dick Schistler as sound engineer and producer for Lone Star Internet Radio. Sound effects were performed live and from scratch without the use of any recordings by Megan Nix and Adam Morrow. Commercial announcers included Cassidy Perkins and Kelly Strang. Live music was performed and improvised tonight by Kim Wood Graham. Now playing at the Owen Theater, the smash Broadway musical Gypsy. The riotous comedy Greater Tuna follows on July 11th. More details on tickets and our Players Theatre Company season can be found at owentheater.com. Special thanks go out to Kathy Cook, owner of the Gallery off the Square in downtown Conroe, for the use of her space for rehearsal purposes. Be sure to stop by her gallery, which is located at 202 North Main in Conroe, Texas, and view breathtaking classic American and Thomas Kincaid artwork, and enjoy some refreshment in Chelsea's Tea Room. Tell her that you heard about the gallery on the Players Theater Company Old Time Radio Hour. Also visit her online at galleryoffthesquare.net. Tonight's players included Patrice Kentamenos as Jane Eyre, Cassidy Perkins as young Jane and Bertha, Kelly Strang as Mason and the Innkeeper, Adam Morrow as Brocklehurst and the Priest, Kim Wood Graham as Mrs. Fairfax, and Sam Martinez as Edward Rochester and as Orson Welles. Tonight's episode was directed by Carol Halley. Series producer on behalf of the Players Theater Company was Timothy Eggert. The Players Theater Company Old Time Radio Hour was created by Craig Campobella and Dick Schisler exclusively for the Players Theater Company. This episode of the Players Theater Company Old Time Radio Hour was performed live on Lone Star Internet Radio in Conroe, Texas on May 24th, 2014, and has been recorded for encore broadcasts. Visit irlonestar.com every month for freshly archived programs like last month's Radio Hour episode, Poltergeist, which is now available on demand for your listening pleasure. Our next live radio production will feature an episode of Father Knows Best on Saturday, June 28th at 7 p.m. Thank you again for joining us. From the glittering arts district of downtown Conroe, Texas, this is your series host, Dennis Nelson, wishing you a pleasant evening and a very bright tomorrow.
Hey everyone, this is Tina, your host from Retro Saturdays. I wanted to invite you to visit the Lone Star Studios here in downtown Conroe, Texas. We're all volunteers here, and we need your help in serving the Montgomery County area. Radio media is a fun field to be in. Lone Star Internet Radio serves Montgomery County with news, current events, local programming, and of course, music. If you are interested in volunteering and sharing your talents in media, go to irlonestar.com and let us hear from you. Lone Star Internet Radio, serving Montgomery County from the heart of downtown Conroe.
Thanks for listening to Lone Star Radio Hour here on Lone Star Community Radio. Don't forget, the Lone Star Radio Hour airs every Sunday at 7 p.m. on irlonestar.com and Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. If you want to join and be part of the Lone Star Radio Hour with your own radio play, contact us today at lscrstudios@gmail.com. We are also looking for support for this time slot, so if you're interested in sponsoring this time slot, contact us again at lscrstudios@gmail.com. And don't forget, this radio play was brought to you by the Players Theater Company in Conroe, Texas. For more information about the Players, please check them out online at owentheater.com/players.